Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento. I'm so excited because my senator is here. Yes, my own senator. Her name is Holly Mitchell, and I am so glad you're here today.
And I'm proud to represent you and your entire family.
And you've met them.
I have,
nice.
yes.
I was in our district recently, and I was riding my bike along the new Expo line.
Good for you.
It was really a lot of fun.
Yes.
But I became a bit sad at one point because there was a homeless encampment. And I was sad not because it was blight, I was sad for the people.
Right.
There's homelessness permeating everywhere.
It is, Brad.
Talk to me.
You know, Brad, it's everywhere. You know, I represent Skid Row, kind of where when you think about homeless people, you think about Skid Row. But the reality is, as Angelinos, we know, as Californians, it's impacting literally every community across the state. Not only that, it's who the homeless community is comprised of. It's families. In Los Angeles County, the number of homeless CalWorks recipients is skyrocketing. And the Social Services Department knows they're homeless because they no longer have an address where they can receive their benefits. And so it's where they're living and who they are.
We learned as a result of a federal report that came out in November, California has 12% of the U.S. population and 21% of the homeless population.
And the highest child poverty rate in the nation. 1 in 3 Californians is a Medi-Cal recipient. And so while I'm glad to say we're experiencing an economic recovery, thank goodness, the general fund is in the most solid position it's been in recent years, there are many members of our community who've not benefited from our economic recovery.
What's going on? I mean, LA County, there's construction going on, and yet LA County has the largest homeless population in the nation.
Brad, it's housing costs. It's salaries not keeping up with the cost of living. We haven't provided COLAs in any of our subsidy programs, SSI, CalWorks, General Relief. And so while there is a recovery and downtown LA is a housing and construction boom, none of those are low-income housing establishments.
Now, Senator, I remember recently you and some of your colleagues in the Senate went to Los Angeles to announce a redirection of Prop 63 funds through a bond initiative.
Yes.
$2 billion bond. Explain the program.
We're thrilled. I was thrilled to be a participant and support the pro tem. It's a bipartisan effort to really use Prop 63 dollars and the bond as really kind of matching and seed dollars to help build new construction. The reality is in Los Angeles, we don't have enough low-income housing units and we don't have enough permanent supportive housing units.
And the supportive, I understand, is the key.
It is critical. At the request of the pro tem, I traveled to Utah to meet with members of their legislature. Utah has done an amazing thing over the past decade. They have, in effect, reduced their chronic homeless population by 90%. I went to Utah, met with legislators, and what they told me, I said, what would you do differently? Or give us some counsel in California. You can't just build the units. You have to make sure that the social supports are a part of each housing unit so the formerly homeless can be successful in their transition.
And you know this better than I from that same report I discussed. LA County's chronic homeless population has grown 55% since 2013. Almost 1/3 of all chronically homeless are in California.
Exactly. And so we have got to, as a collective, what amazed me about the Utah model is I met with people at various levels of government, state, county, city, private sector, nonprofit organizations, homeless advocates, and they are all on this collective same page.
But let me ask you about who the clients are, if I can use that term. So often, especially in the last decade or last century, if I can say, in order to enter a homeless shelter, there would be a demand of sobriety. Now, God bless the intent.
Sure.
But some folks aren't there yet. They need the shelter to get sober. I understand we're turning a page on that focus. Tell us about Housing First.
So Housing First is the concept that drives the Utah model. It's the concept behind a bill I'm carrying, Senate Bill 1380, which says the number one way to combat homelessness is to give somebody a home. We've had budget hearings, we've had preliminary hearings on this overall concept, and we've had formerly homeless individuals come and tell us what they needed. in order to be in a place to enter sobriety, to make decisions about sobriety, to combat mental illness, and to have a place where you can feel safe, have your medications, you need a home first. And so that really is this model. It's been tested across the country, and it really is the new direction that all homeless services are moving to.
So we're not demanding sobriety before they walk in the door?
No, because it's not realistic to think if I am living on the river here in Sacramento in the middle of El Nino, that I'm ready and prepared and equipped to combat the demons that I'm struggling with.
So many folks who are homeless may be working.
Yes.
And there is a frustration among some that here we have folks working and they can't afford a home. So I understand recently the members of the legislature working with some labor groups have come together and are going to put into legislation a minimum wage increase.
Yes.
This avoids a ballot initiative in November, and essentially what the agreement does is it increases the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2021.
Correct. And so it's a more gradual increase than some of the city measures, more gradual than the city of Los Angeles. It also creates an opportunity that if our economy falls on hard times again, the legislature and the governor can tweak, if you will, the timeline.
I think it's 2022 actually, but be that as it may.
Yes. And so it gives the control to the governor and the legislature to adjust it if we need to based on the health of the state's general fund.
But let me ask you about the local entities that are moving at a more rapid rate. Some folks are a little frustrated that there wasn't a preemption provision in the agreement because part of the angst behind minimum wages, the kind of the competition between cities, either a race to the top or a race to the bottom. What was the reasoning behind the decision not to preempt?
You know, it's a good question. I was not in the room to negotiate. That was a leadership deal that we've just heard about, you know, in recent days. But I think from the legislature's perspective, given the fact that we've had several bills, we have taken action, but it didn't get us to 15 at all. I think it was an effort to really try to make sure that we have a uniform application across the state to really address some of those municipalities that have been silent on this issue.
What about, though, look, $15 in Los Angeles County is very different than $15 in Alpine County.
That's true.
Should we look at the Oregon model, which increases the minimum wage at different levels based upon the cost of living in your region?
Let's be clear, $15 an hour isn't enough in and of itself to pull people out of poverty. And so while you might get more for your $15 per hour job in Alpine versus LA, the real loser in that equation is the Angelino, because the cost of living in LA County, the second most costly county for housing in the state, let's be clear, why 15 is a stretch, it's not the panacea that some people may assume.
Senator, we live near each other. The Expo line is going to open soon.
I'm thrilled.
I rode my bike with my daughters and wife along the Expo line. There's a bike trail along the Expo line, the subway to the sea.
Yes.
This is life-changing.
It is going to change our lives. You know, my district office is in Exposition Park. And from my office, so I can see people straight to me, to the Rose Garden, to the California Science Center. It has exceeded, that leg of the route has exceeded expectations around ridership. Angelinos were ready and we're using it. And your example is case in point. I'm thrilled.
I'm thrilled. Her name is Senator Holly Mitchell. She's my senator. She represents significant portions of LA County. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento today. It's Local Edition.